Thanks for coming today. Yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about Perusal, and actually we have 4 people who have taught with it here at the university. Daniel Opperwall is from the Center for Extended Learning, but he also teaches at the University of Toronto. So he will be talking a little bit about the background, or giving an introduction to it. He's an online learning consultant. Katie Plaisance is Associate Professor at Knowledge Integration. Brandon DeHart is an instructor and RoboHub Manager in the Faculty of Engineering. Mario Boido is Associate Professor, Department of Spanish in Latin American Studies. So you can see we have people from across the spectrum. And so this tool is one of my favorites. I think it can do a lot to really change how people learn and really engage the students in a face-to-face class, in an online class, and in a blended class. So just want to quickly do some little housekeeping. Just letting you know, if you can please just try and remain muted unless you're speaking. We're going to just go through the rotation of the people just talking, sharing their experiences with it after Daniel does the brief introduction of the tool itself. And then I will save questions till the end so everybody has a chance, because we might end up getting stuck with a good conversation, but we'll have lots of time if everybody sticks to their 10 minutes. We'll have lots of time for discussion at the end and questions, and you can throw them in the chat as you go, and I can maybe try and answer them, and I'll manage the chat. And then we'll have time for raise hand questions at the end. Okay. So without anything this session will also be recorded, and it has actually started being recorded. So if you're uncomfortable with having your face, just turn your camera off. And with that, I will turn it over to Daniel to get started.
All right, thanks, Mary. Yes, hi, it's Daniel Opperwall from the Center for Extended Learning, online learning consultant over there. So working with faculty across the university and across various disciplines to build fully online courses. And as Mary mentioned, I've also taught a bit myself with Perusall over at University of Toronto in graduate level seminar courses, fully online seminar courses. But I'll leave the faculty perspective a little more for the other faculty members who are here today. So what I want to show you is just the basics of what Perusall is, what it does, give you a chance to actually just see the interface, so that when the faculty members come and talk to you about how they've used it, it'll be a little less abstract. That's my goal. So I'm not going to go into every single detail. I think the stuff you'll be most interested to know will come out from the faculty members, but I wanted you to have a little bit of concrete there. So at its core, Perusall is really a very simple tool at the heart of it. It's a document collaboration tool. When you boil it all down, what Perusall does is allows you and your students to share a document, or now a video, or even a podcast in front of you, same kind of digital document, and to highlight and comment on it back and forth. It's really, at the core, it's that simple. You can upload PDFs, you can link to most websites, and Perusall, now very exciting, can use YouTube videos and other similar styles of video, as well as podcasts. You can even use some multimedia in there. And do note right off the bat, the copyright rules in Perusall apply the same as they would in Learn. So really no difference there from a copyright point of view, but be aware of what you're doing copyright-wise. So Perusall has 2 basic modalities, pedagogically speaking, or at least 2 that we've identified so far. Maybe you'll find a whole third way of using this tool that's really cool. But the 2 basic ways that we tend to see it used are, in the first place, more for factual-based materials, textbooks, and this kind of thing. This is actually what Perusall was originally designed for. It's what the creators had in mind. They were thinking about physics courses specifically, in fact. And what they were trying to do is create a tool that would encourage metacognition and learning as a community, especially with complex, difficult, fact-based or text-based materials. So in essence, when you use Perusall this way, students are looking at a textbook or an article or something similar, and as they're reading through, they're adding comments and questions as they go, and then responding to one another's comments and questions, and allowing you as an instructor to also get in there and respond to those comments and questions. And so that allows them to read as a community, work through difficult problems or parts of the text that may be harder to understand, and that kind of thing together, as well as with assistance from you in an asynchronous way. So people are checking in on the text in their own time, and yet you're able to create that social presence and instructor presence as they read along throughout the week. So that modality of Perusall could be used in any discipline, of course. It's especially worth considering if you're in a STEM course and that sort of thing. But it could be used really anywhere that you're wanting students to read together, especially difficult materials like that. The second modality, which we've really discovered and has gotten a lot of use, is to use it as an opportunity for creating seminar discussions that surround a shared piece of text. This is how I've used it myself. So this is very useful for things like literature courses or language courses or anything where you want students to be looking at a text together and actually thinking, talking about it, working through it. And they use that exact same functionality of creating comments to create that seminar discussion. So it's a lot like using a forum, except you have the ease of sharing that text or piece of video, and you can easily see what people are responding to, and people can respond back and forth. So that's the two kind of broad modalities that we usually see Perusall used in. So I want to show you what the actual tool looks like and give you a sense of just its most basic, most essential features before I hand it over to the other faculty members to talk through their really interesting use cases. This is a Perusall course. It is, in fact, this course is something I've used for previous webinars on active learning. So everything in here is other test users. There's no actual students in here. I'm not showing you a real course in that way. But for all intents and purposes, from Perusall's point of view, it is a real course. This is exactly what your own courses will also look like. This is the exact same interface you will see. So when you enter into Perusall, the heart of what happens here is we'll first create a library of resources that you can use in your assignments. That happens here in this interface under Library. And you'll see the options over there on the right for what you can bring in. The first one there is Book from the Perusall catalog. It is possible to assign textbooks within Perusall and have students buy them within the system. That's actually how Perusall makes any money. They don't charge for the use of the tool. They're hoping to sell textbooks this way. It is a possibility. I believe some people at Waterloo have done that. So that's out there. What we more often see, though, is bring your own content. And again, as long as you're within copyright rules, you can bring your own stuff to Perusall, including web pages, documents from a Dropbox, or upload from your computer, videos, and podcasts. What you'll see over here on the left that I'm highlighting is a couple of pieces of content that I've brought in already, so we don't have to sit and wait for things to upload. But it's a pretty simple interface. You'll click through, you'll bring your content. Then as an instructor, what you're going to do is create an assignment on the basis of that piece of content. So I'm showing you the interface here where we start by creating an assignment. We'll grab the piece of content we want to work through. If there's a piece of content you want to assign, you can tell them which piece you want to assign, and then you'll go through creating the assignment name, the instructions for students, and a few other settings that I don't want to get too deep into right at the moment to create your assignment. And students will then see it when they visit your Perusall course. What we've now then done is created this shared document that students are all going to be looking at. Perusall always operates in groups, by the way, as a default. So if you have a large course, you'll set the group size, and it will typically assign them randomly into those groups. And students will come in and get started on actually commenting on a document or a video that you've created. So I'm going to show you the student view here really quickly now. I'm now in as a student. I'm looking at my screen the way the student will see the same course. And you can see I have 3 assignments here if I'm a student. One of them is a quote from William Shakespeare. This came from a website. And if I'm a student, I'm going to click in to work on my assignment. It's showing me a tour right now, actually. Sorry. I'll skip that for the moment. And I'm going to see the actual assignment I'm supposed to fill out here on the right. So here it's telling me to highlight one word or phrase in the text where Puck mentions sleep or dreaming, and talk a little bit about what you think about it. So I'm imagining a literature course here dealing with Shakespeare. What I'm basically going to do as a student is what I've read through the text or a part of the text and I'm ready to comment. It's as simple really as this. I'm going to highlight and I'm going to create a comment, just like that. This comment now becomes public to the rest of my group, and other students will be able to see it and they'll be able to respond back to it by clicking on existing comments and responding back to them. So you can see here, here's one from me. I had preloaded with a long response about what I think slumbered means. Some people have upvoted this comment. A bunch of people have responded to it with emojis. And we create the conversation back and forth that way. It's really basically that simple. One last thing I want to mention before I hand it over to the faculty to tell you what they've really done with this, which is the interesting part, as I said, is that Perusall has a number of grading options. We do have the ability to push Perusal Grades into Learn. I'm not going to go into the deep details of that setup right now, but it is possible, and Mary is our resident expert at Waterloo for getting that all set up in your actual courses. But basically, Perusall will allow you to either auto-grade or manually grade what people have done within the Perusall course, especially on the basis of what they've done metrically, how many posts they've created, how many responses they've made, and that sort of thing. So I'm back in as a faculty member, as an instructor, and I just wanted to show you very quickly the grade settings interface that we have here in Perusall and some of the kinds of options that you can set up. Basically, if you want to use auto-grading features in Perusall, there is a qualitative score piece here that's based on an algorithm, quality algorithm. To be honest, we don't know as much as we would like about that algorithm, and I'll let faculty speak to it if they've used it, how good they found it was. I think we've got some really mixed reviews, but it does exist. Beyond that, what we can do with a Perusall assignment is set up grade targets that are much more quantitative in terms of how much students are engaging with one another, how much they're posting, that kind of thing. So we can set different marks for how often they've opened the assignment, how often they've read the assignment, active reading targets, which respond to how much they're engaging in terms of how they're making their posts and comments, how many responses they're getting, how many upvotes they're getting, and we can control the impact of any of these pieces, all the way from 0, like I don't care how many upvotes you're getting, to, for some reason, I think upvotes are really important, I want it all the way at 65. And basically, you use these metrics to kind of set things up if you're using auto-grading in Perusall. Now, for myself in a seminar course, I've actually never assigned the auto-grading this way, except just to make sure people have done a minimum number of posts, because I'm wanting to look more at that qualitative part from my own point of view. So the other thing you can obviously do with Perusall is create an assignment and then just go score it manually as you will. So that's a real simple rundown just to kind of show you what this looks like and give you a sense of what it does. At the heart of it, Perusall is a very, very simple tool. And what that basically means from a design point of view is that there's tons of things you can do with it. Anything you can imagine as far as an assignment that relies on students interacting with the text or a piece of video that way, you can set up, and Perusall could be a very, very good choice for what you're trying to do. And the key thing here that really makes Perusall unique and interesting is that this happens asynchronously. So people are using it sometimes in-class versions of courses or for fully online courses. Anytime you want students to be able to have that interaction but not have to all be signed in at the same time with that text, Perusall could be a really good and really interesting choice. So to give you much more detail and a much more interesting spiel about what you might actually do with this, I'm now going to turn it over to our faculty members who are here and let them talk about the good stuff. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Brandon. I used Perusall in the spring 2020 term to teach a fourth-year robotics course. And in the process of switching over to the very rapid remote setup, I discovered Perusall and immediately jumped on board because I was also in the process of already switching over the course to an open textbook. So the fact that I could just take the open textbook and I got permission from both the author and the publisher, just in case, I put it up on Perusall. And the only reason I took that extra step is because the published version of the textbook is also available for sale from Perusall. But the author has made kind of like an open version of it, a preprint version kind of thing. So I put that up, and we used it for readings. We used it for practice problems. We used it for kind of the syllabus and the course outline, so people could kind of make comments and ask questions about various aspects of that, both the schedule and the syllabus. And really what my intent was to effectively use Perusall to facilitate flipping the course. So what I ended up doing when I taught the course was I put the readings, I put videos as well. Each of the kind of sections or chapters had various videos from the publisher that kind of introduced the various topics. So I told the class that they should watch the videos. Now there is the ability in Perusall to actually annotate videos, so comment on videos at particular times in the video. So they're going to be their own separate thing, as opposed to when I had done it originally, the videos were actually part of the comment stream. So before any of the students were in the course, I put videos up as kind of the first comment. And I asked everybody to kind of check or upvote or respond when they viewed the video, so I knew that they had at least seen the video introduction pieces. And then for the synchronous and asynchronous pieces that we were doing, we had quizzes, and I did Q&A sessions and problem solving and all of that kind of stuff, all the fun that you would do in class and in tutorials and in the lab if we had been in person. So effectively, I used Perusall to introduce the content, to have discussions about the content, and both video and text. And then we used our time together, whether it was synchronous, asynchronous, office hours, whatever it was, to actually do application work. So how do you use it? Where do you use it? Let's do an example, all of those kinds of things. And it worked really, really effectively. And a lot of the feedback that I got for the course was talking about how it was great to have the ability to call out a word or a phrase or an equation or a graphic, because there's also the ability in Perusall that you can kind of comment on a section of a page. You can kind of drag a box around a piece of an image or a whole page or whatever it is and talk about that, as opposed to a word highlighting, a paragraph. So you can talk about those particular things that are in the book, in the text, in a video, and kind of provide that extra information that you would get if you were in, let's say, a more traditional lecture style class and students put up their hand to say, yeah, but what does that mean? Or whatever. You can get that directly when you're doing it with this kind of approach, which you don't get, I find, if it's, sharing of a video beforehand and then you do questions after, or sharing of a text and then you talk about it afterwards, right? It's really this kind of real-time annotation, real-time feedback piece connected directly to the content itself, which is really quite powerful. And I wanted to say too that I had a fair number of people who cautioned me about using something like this in a STEM field, because it seems like it's very much built around, although it did come from physics, it seems like it's built around kind of reading text and annotating text and discussing text. But because of the ability to both annotate in the videos now, and also to grab kind of sections of things and say, like, what about this equation? What about this piece of this graphic? Or, here is a drawing of a robot, for example, in my course. Why are the frames pointed in such and such a way? And you can actually draw right on it. You can do all kinds of interesting things with annotation. So it provides a lot of strength and a lot of interesting ways to do that. There are other pieces to it, like discussion boards and various things that we ended up not using that I might use coming up this coming term, depending on which tools I end up deciding to work with. But it does have a decent interface for all of that. And yes, Anton, it does, as far as I remember, I'm pretty sure I used it a few times, support latex notation in the comments as well. So you can actually write out proper equation notation and powers and all of that fun stuff in the commenting. The only other thing I want to mention is that I did use the kind of automated grading, where it kind of does the automated grading piece and then it dumps back those marks. They're not really marks, but marks back into Learn, and then those can be shuffled and made bonus or not bonus or whatever on the Learn side of things. So it kind of dumps them back. I started with their kind of built-in, I think they call it their heuristic marking model, but I ended up, because of the way that the students were interacting with it and I was interacting with it, vastly reducing the annotations marks and dramatically increasing the active reading and the upvoting sides of things, where the purpose and the goal was to kind of get everybody actively reading through the material and then interacting with my posts and with each other's posts. So most of the marks for that on the engagement and things like that within Perusall was for actually interacting with each other, as opposed to just posting comments or things like that. And part of the nice thing there is that the upvoting weight, I guess, for lack of a better term, is both for posting a comment that gets upvotes and for upvoting and commenting on other people's work. So it kind of builds in that piece where you're not going to make a one-off comment like, I like that thing, because nobody's going to comment and reply and add check marks and all of that, right? You need to actually provide something meaningful that the other students benefit from in order to get that response and therefore then get that additional input piece. I think that's it for me. Happy to field questions, and I'm sure there's going to be some time for Q&A at the end. So I will pass it on to, I believe Katie was next.
Yes, thanks. All right, can everybody see me and hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so I thought I'd provide a little bit of context first. So I started using Perusall last fall. So I came across it through some teaching workshops around how to have engaging discussions in class when we're on the online format. This was a big concern for me because my classes tend to be smaller, so no more than 35 students, and they're discussion heavy. They're also reading and writing intensive. So I came across Perusall, and so I was using it for sort of the second purpose that Daniel talked about. So as I mentioned, I have classes that are about 38 to 40 students. So I had one last fall and one this winter with that size, and then I have another class right now that's got 12 students I'm using it for as well. And so just a little bit of context of what I was doing before was, for most of my classes, we meet twice a week. There's a required reading for each class, and the students need to have done the reading because we do a lot of discussion around the reading. And so normally what I do is I assign the reading, then when they come into class, I have a check-in question for them about the reading that they write on like an index card, and then I do an interactive lecture and facilitate discussion. So I wanted to be able to capture that somehow in the online environment. And so what I do with Perusall is I do have 2 optional live class sessions a week, and they're at about 11 a.m. And so the night before at 10 p.m., students have to finish their reading and submit their annotations. The default setting for Perusall is 7 annotations. I dropped that down to 5 last fall, and then feedback I got from students suggested to drop it to 4. So I dropped it to 4 for this semester, and everybody seemed pretty happy with that, and I'm pretty happy with the activity on there. I break them into groups, so I also have tested various group sizes and asked for feedback, and the sweet spot for my classes, which again tend to be reading and participation intensive, are about 8 to 10. And so I'll just say, to provide a little bit more context, I'm teaching in knowledge integration, but my disciplinary background is philosophy, and I teach very interdisciplinary courses that draw on material from philosophy, sociology, psychology, and a few other disciplines. So very different context than Brandon's. Okay, so I've got 2 readings a week and the requirement for 4 high quality annotations. And so I say a little bit about what that looks like for the students. I actually have an assignment that they get at the beginning, like a set of assignment instructions. They get it at the beginning of the semester for using Perusall that I've written myself. And so 15% of their course grade is based on the Perusall readings. And the way I do it is I use specification grading or specs grading, where it's really just pass fail for each reading. So the question is, did you do 4 high quality annotations by the deadline? If yes, you get 100%. If no, you get 0. So they get a 0 or 1 for every reading. I do allow 2 late readings with a 2-week late window. This semester I bumped it to 3 because everybody's burned out. And then that I can talk more about that later, but that does require a manual change or extension of a deadline. So if you have really big classes, making those kinds of exceptions can get a little bit tricky. I do use the algorithm. I find that works really well given what I'm trying to do. And so what I can do in the algorithm is basically say that there's 3 different levels. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest, and that I want students to have like at least a 3 or at least a 4 that counts as a high quality annotation. And so it will basically grade the 4 best annotations from each student. And if they have done that many, then they'll get full credit. I find that most students do more than that. I've seen anywhere from like 5 to 10 from probably about half the students, and the other half do more like 4 to 5. Okay, let me see what else I want to say. All right. So I mentioned I set them up in groups of about 8 to 10. And so what I do is you have to be careful with the grouping. If you are going to do grouping, make sure you really read through Perusal's instructions on it, because one of the dangers with changing grouping is that if you set up groups and then you later change it, then students so the groups actually change. If I comment on a group member's annotation and then I get switched to another group, I will not see, I believe, my own response to their comment anymore, and I won't see their comment anymore. So you do have to be careful. The way I'm doing it is that the first time I upload a reading, I assign them into groups of 8 to 10. And then the morning after the deadline, I switch everything back to the group of the class size. So if the class size is 38, I switch it back to, I reshuffle to 38. That means that students can, so when they're actually doing their annotations and doing the reading, they're only going to see comments from 7 or 8 other students, which is manageable. And then replying to those number of students if they choose to reply. I count replies the same as regular posts. But then by opening it up the next morning after the deadline, they can go back and see everybody's comments. And it was actually a student who suggested this to me last semester, and I'm doing it now. And a lot of students have commented how much they appreciate it, especially when they're working on a paper and they can go back to previous readings and kind of see what the fuller conversations were from that. And then I also have directions for them about how to cite Perusal posts from other students, especially because a lot of the essays they're writing are around forming their own ideas, and so citing other students' ideas is really important as well. Okay, so that's mostly what I do with Perusal, and so I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of it, and then one extra activity I've started doing that's been really good. So in terms of the benefits, I would say that the reading comprehension, despite the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic, has gone up as a result of using Perusal. The classes that I'm using it in right now are classes I've been teaching for more than a decade. So I have like pretty good comparisons. So I'd say there's better reading comprehension. I also find that it's helpful for me because normally when I have these classes, I will assign students a reading. I'll give them a little bit of an overview. Sometimes they even provide them with reading notes. Then they'll come to class, and then I'm fielding all these questions of things they didn't understand, and that eats up our discussion time. Now what I do is first of all, when I upload the reading, before I even open it as an assignment, I seed the reading with my own notes. So for example, if we're reading something on philosophy of science and the author talks about logical positivism, but doesn't explain really what that is, I will highlight logical positivism, and then I'll write a post about, hey, here's what this is, and then maybe even link to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy or some open access source where they can find out more information. So it's really good for like seeding the readings and giving students context that would be good for them to have right on the spot. So it's really good sort of just-in-time teaching practice. The second thing is that then I get to read through their comments before class. And first of all, I can address their questions before they come to class. And so I don't feel like I have to spend a lot of class time doing that. And other students can see my responses. And then I also can see how they're all responding to their reading. And that oftentimes then determines how I run the discussion. And so one of the things I've done, for example, is looked for particular themes. And then in my Google Slides for the day for class online, I will list out some of the themes I was noticing. And sometimes I even do a Perusal spotlight where I will put quotes from students and then with the permission cite their name. And I think it's nice because then students can see like how their ideas are getting used and then how I'm building on those. So given all of these advantages, I'm definitely going to be using Perusal in person. And I will also say I did midterm feedback and end of term feedback surveys last semester and then midterm feedback surveys this semester. And in all cases, the students were like overwhelmingly positive about Perusal, and any negative responses were things like tweaks, like going down from 5 to 4 or opening it up so they could see each other's. But highly, the students really like it, so high evaluations from the students. So last thing I wanted to share is a practice that I've been doing where the first assignment that I have students do is to read the syllabus and annotate the syllabus. So the first week of class, before they do any readings, I upload a PDF of the syllabus to Perusal. And I asked them to do at least one annotation on the syllabus. And then at the very end, I have a question that says, have you read the syllabus, and have you either posted any questions you have or any concerns you have here, or emailed the instructor to share those questions or comments. And then they have to reply yes. Or, yes, I've emailed you, or whatever. And then in their annotation, it can be a question they have, it can be something they're excited about, a comment. And that's really cool because A, I know they've read the syllabus. B, I think it's better than a syllabus quiz, and it gets a lot of good conversation going. And C, I get to see not just where they have questions, but like what kinds of things they're particularly excited about. And that's actually allowed me to pivot throughout the semester as well. The last thing I do is I then, at the end of the semester, I do a clean version of the syllabus, and I ask them to annotate it again now that they've taken the class. And that's really cool because it reminds them of the learning objectives, which is a great activity to do before they do course evaluations. And then also it gives me more insight into how, like, what kinds of things they think I could be adding or clarifying now that they've actually taken the course. And I will just say, because I think it's important to give credit where credit is due, this is where I got the idea for annotating the course syllabus. And so I recommend having a look at that blog post by Remy Collier. And I think that's it. So I can answer questions during our Q&A later on today too. So Mario, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everyone. So today I'm here to share my experience implementing Perusal as we pivoted to remote learning, remote delivery in the fall, and then on the winter. And I have to say, sort of adopting Perusal is perhaps it is without doubt one of the best things that happened in the pandemic. Competition for that top spot is not very tough, but the experience with Perusal has been extremely, extremely positive. I was really worried about the switch to remote learning. I had the summer to fret over it. I didn't really have any experience teaching online. I did, however, have a good sense of how much work it is to put together an online course with CEL, and that combined with what's been for me a very traditional reliance on face-to-face interactions made the prospect of switching to remote learning very, like I said, very daunting. And so I spent a lot of time trying to think about how I might create an experience that would be of a quality, that we've all come to expect from in-person learning. So in my case, I had to adapt 3 courses. I taught 2 courses in the fall, and 1 course I'm teaching now. I'm using Perusal in all of them. So one was a cultural theory course. This is CI 300. So very reading intensive. My courses resemble a lot of what Katie described in hers. So reading intensive, discussion based. A 4th-year seminar on visual culture, Hispanic visual culture, where the focus is obviously on visual culture, so a lot of images, video, and secondary sources. And then right now I'm using Perusal for an introduction to Latin American literature, which I teach in Spanish. So generally speaking, these courses, they're small classes. We're talking, 12 to 15 students. There is a strong emphasis on discussion of the readings and face-to-face interactions. This is usually reflected in about 10 to 15% participation grade. The course typically involves 3 or 4 smaller written assignments, 35% of the grade, give or take, generally speaking, an oral presentation for 10 to 15%, and then weekly reflections on a learning log, which is a free writing exercise. They write for 15 minutes and then submit that. And then I always have a sort of a large research project. It's a scaffolded assignment, 3 parts to it for about 45% of the grade. So when I learned about Perusal, and I forget how I came across it, one of the many searches I did online, I was immediately intrigued by the potential. I saw a lot of potential because this sort of the idea of annotating together as a group is really good. I feel it blends best of both worlds. It blends this idea of reading together, which is sort of a timeless practice, with the convenience of being able to do it online, and asynchronously, which is, of course, ideal for when we're teaching. So the initial instinct was to let Perusal replace the oral presentation and in-class participation. So I looked at the readings, I organized the readings, and for each course, and I created sort of 9 reading activities. I didn't call them assignments because I was afraid that would be intimidating. Who knows? But at this point, when I sort of looked at what I had, I realized that this probably needed to be worth more, because I was asking students to do a lot, and I felt that this was going to be really well worth the effort. I was also sort of mindful not to overwhelm students. So in the end, Perusal makes up 40% of the final grade and the 3 courses that I'm talking about, and the 3 courses that I've used it. And it's replaced participation, it's replaced presentations, and it's replaced also the written assignments. So in the end, I've set it up so that students do, I count 8 out of 9 reading activities for a total of 40%, so it's 5% each. They're autograded. When I first came to Perusal, I was, again, a little bit perhaps overwhelmed by the amount of choices, and then the sort of the flexibility, if you will, of the scoring. So I used the defaults. I didn't tell students about the max, or about the 7 annotations that they were expected to make, and it worked really well. I've had a very positive experience with that. So in the end, the course looks like 40% on Perusal, 45% on the final project. And then 15% on these weekly logs. In addition to that, I do a 1-hour lecture. I do it live, but I record it, and it gets posted to Learn. And the students were very appreciative of the format. They really enjoyed it. Some commented on how nice it was that I had taken the effort to really adapt the course to the new environment. As opposed to just dumping my notes online and expecting them to teach themselves, as one put it. So like I said, I used the default settings on the algorithm. I did find in one reading student, I was not getting as much engagement, and then I looked, and then the reading, I didn't really realize this at the beginning, was a little bit shorter. So I did feel that it was fair to reduce the number of annotations, the required annotations, from 7 to 5. And you can do that on the fly. It's very convenient that way. The experience, like I said, has been extremely positive. The flexibility, I think, in the comment section, Brandon mentioned a little bit, was very welcomed. I was able to share a lot of additional material in terms of just videos, images, links that just in response to what people were saying, or to class discussion. So that was very positive. I did find, like Katie mentioned, that there's a lot more engagement. The students are reading more, they're commenting more, they're working harder. The depth of analysis is the change in that is really noticeable. We're getting far richer, more in-depth conversations. And students notice this. I notice this. Students notice it. Students really like reading other students' comments. I've heard a lot of feedback on that, and it's very positive. And then one thing that sort of surprised me a little bit, I was concerned about how to create sort of the sense of community through the remote and the remote experience. But Perusal played a huge part in that, and did a great job, really. I found that students were sharing oftentimes personal information, and they seemed quite comfortable. It was always a very friendly, very warm conversations and then discussions that we were having. People even commented, it feels like we're just among friends here, which was just lovely to hear. So like I said, I used it. I also used it. I used it in my visual culture class seminar. We used it with video. We used it specifically with YouTube videos. I would have loved to use it with some films. Unfortunately, because of the platform where the films were Canopy, I couldn't quite bring them into Perusal. But it's a great experience. It's a great experience, and it's the same effect that you have with the text. Very in depth, very focused. Commentary and so very focused discussion, which just it makes for such a better experience. I can't believe it took me a pandemic to come to this, but now that I have, I don't think I'm ever going back. I have a really hard time imagining a course that I might teach where I would not find a very useful. Where I wouldn't find Perusal extremely useful. I think it's just such a great tool. It makes the experience of class. I think it makes the class better for students. Students get more out of it. We all get more out of it. It's much richer. Let me look through my notes. I don't think. Oh, one thing I did notice, and it might be interesting for some of you to know, like I mentioned, I used the Autograding. I found it to be very good. I found it to be extremely reliant. I was worried, so I was checking it very closely throughout. It works really well. This term, like I mentioned, I'm teaching the course in Spanish, and the algorithm, I mean, it's the same algorithm, but it does seem to have trouble sort of grading comments in Spanish. It doesn't seem to recognize Spanish as well as English, and so the scores on the comments are actually quite punishing. And so I find myself overriding a lot of those. Nonetheless, the quality of interaction is still there. It remains an incredibly good experience. And then, yeah, marks do get uploaded automatically onto Learn, which I find very convenient. So with that said, I don't think I have anything else here in my notes. I'm happy to answer any questions and continue the conversation, maybe as a group.
Katie, there's a question for you from Micheline. Can you copy assignments from term to term without student comments?
Yes, I actually just was emailing with Perusall about
okay.
that. And you can. So they said that basically you can copy you go in and you copy an existing course and you copy it over, and then all of the assignments should be in there, and then all of your own comments, but then all the student comments will be taken out because they won't be registered in that class anymore. So that's awesome because, as I said, I'm going to be using this when I go back in person. So now for future classes, I have the readings, like they're already seated, it's ready to go. So I think it's actually really, if you look at this as an investment of your time, it's really worth it. I spent a ridiculous amount of time last semester. Thankfully, I only had one class. Putting everything together, and a lot of it was seating the readings on Perusall and like replying to students and things like that. But now it's really worth it. And yeah, and I just think the level of engagement and understanding, it really paid off. I think they can upload pictures. I will also say a little tip is I asked students at the beginning of the semester to upload an avatar of them, like representing themselves, which can be a photo, a Bitmoji, which is my preference, or just any kind of image, and then to upload that to Perusall and to Zoom, because I use Zoom for my class sessions, and to Learn. And so it's the same image. And so it's really nice because, especially in a group of 40, we can really quickly start to associate each other with those images, and it makes it easier to create community in the class.
I wanted to add, I forgot in my original bit that just two very small little things that I think can be really helpfully applied. One is that students can mark their posts as questions. I'm not sure if this came up with the other But that can be really helpful. And if it's a question they actually want an answer to, they can mark that as a question. You can see that, and you can see where a lot of questions are happening. Other students can see it. And then also, if you upvote as an instructor a response, it can be marked as having been upvoted by the instructor specifically. And that can help too, especially in like a STEM situation where you want to make sure, okay, this is actually the right answer or whatever, that people can get that signal from you as an instructor. So just two little things I forgot to mention.
And I'll just answer the question about uploading a PDF. Are students able to download it? You can set that to be able to download. So that's or not. I mean, depending, that's a copyright thing too. So you might want to make sure you're following the copyright rules. I put that up at the top of the chat. We'll gather this chat as well and send it out. There are the links and things that are been placed in the chat. But yes, you can set that when you're setting your assignment to the library. In the Perusall library, not the
yeah. A couple things about that, like Daniel showed at the beginning, there's the library and then there's the assignments, and those are different. So like one of the things you could do at the beginning of the semester is just upload everything into the library, and then you could do assignments as you go if you're not sure, like, oh, I might assign these on different dates. And then what's nice is, let's say like there's an open access book that you have a PDF of, and you've uploaded that into the library, and you want to assign like 3 different chapters, then you can assign partial content. So you don't have to like make separate PDFs with just that chapter. When you actually assign it, it says, do you want to assign all the content or just part of it? And then when it goes into the library from the first place, so that's more where the documents are, as opposed to the assignments, which give them the due dates. In the library, that's where you'll check whether or not you want them to be able to download it.
And I will say, just to respond to Homera, it's super easy to use the features in Perusall. If you have 100 students, I think the big recommendation would be is to use groups, as Jason said, yeah. Because if you have 100 people, like I went through the, and we should mention this too, actually. So Eric Mazur of iClicker fame actually is one of the kind of founding members of Perusall as well, and runs kind of an online session. I think there's a few more coming up over the next couple months that I'm sure are going to get linked at some point. But he was running a session on Perusall and using Perusall and all those kinds of things, and there was maybe 50 instructors per group, and there were several groups, and you can actually go in and see, like, what is this group saying about a particular assignment, or what is this group saying about it, and you can kind of cross-seed information as well, which is a nice way to do something similar to what Katie was talking about, where you can say, like, in this other thread, X student, with their permission obviously, has said ABC. Maybe that's helpful, right? But yeah, the groups is a big thing.
Another thing with a big class that is helpful with Perusall, I didn't really want to go too far into this. I'm kind of picking the pieces to show you, but you can pull a confusion report that in a large class can help you to home in on sections, especially again if it's a textbook type thing you're doing, can home in on sections where students are having a lot of trouble, and then you could make a whole class announcement or whatever. Or if you're using it for in class, you can come in and start a class, say, hey, a lot of people were really stuck on whatever. So for a big class, that can be really handy to just pull that report and see, okay, here's the 3 sections that everybody was tripping on, and we'll go back over that.
I think I was just going to say it really depends on how you're going to use it too, right? Like if you're going to have a discussion about something, then a smaller group is going to make the discussion more kind of thoughtful and kind of responsive and engaged between the people. Whereas if you're using it as, here is ground truth, let's go talk about it somewhere else, or here is ground truth, figure out these equations or whatever, then most of the comments that you're going to get on something like that is, what is this component, or what is this symbol, or how does this work? And then that's useful for everybody. So as Katie said in the comments there, you can actually have, like, this is a ground truth document, everyone can comment on it because most of it's not going to be discussion, and then you could have discussion on particular papers, essays, whatever it might be, where you can split them up into those smaller groups to make that discussion work better.
Yeah, and one thing to note is that, like, anything that you write, everybody will be able to see. So let's say there are 6 groups of 20 for a class of 120. You don't have to look at the document 6 times to see their comments. It's all amalgamated for you. So you look at it and then you see it as if it's all just one class. You can then, another really nice feature is at the top of Perusall, there's a drop down for the comments of what to show you. So you can have it show you all comments, unread comments, which is what I do because I go back and read them 2 or 3 times over the course of a few days. Comments from a specific group, comments from a specific student, comments with a specific hashtag, so you could have them using hashtags, just your own comments, comments that are actually questions. So all these kinds of things, it's really nice. And so, so I've done this sometimes where I've, looked at comments from a specific group, or just being able to read the unread. And then I show the students this. So for example, when I open it up, they can go and see, like, just to show them the unread comments, so that they don't have to like reread all the ones they've already seen. Or some students before papers do want to go back and like just look at my comments, so they can sort and just see instructor comments.
Yeah, just to comment, I responded in the chat, but Namir's asking about doing a test run if you get volunteers. It's super easy to do it, especially if you already have a Learn course set up. You can, like, basically within the Learn course, if you just put in the link following the instructions here, it creates that course on Perusall, and then only the people who click the link that you provide, whatever it might be, get into that course. And then their like user and everything is automatically created via Learn in that thing. Or you can go directly to Perusall, create a course, and then post link it into Learn. And if you do that, then you can also just say, like, these 5 email addresses have access to this, right? And I actually used that when I was setting up the course in the first place. I invited like current and past TAs and the lab instructor and things like that to just say, like, hey, pretend you're students, go wild, figure out what you can do and what can't you do, try to break things, whatever, before we started the term.
Yeah, that's a great idea to do, actually, to test it for sure. The other thing is, if you want to use it in your course in Learn, to use the Learn integration, you have to send an email to, it says it in the page that I sent around, but you have to email Learn help to get it turned on, and then follow the instructions to add it to the. So there are a few steps, but it's easy, it's quick and easy. So.
Yeah, the other thing is that remember that in Learn, we have each class, I think, has 2 test students. So what you can do is you could create the link, maybe like somewhere where just buried somewhere so your other students won't see it if you want to test it yourself. Have your 2, go and impersonate your test students, click on it, then they'll show up. So like one of my test students is my dog, like I have a picture of my dog. And so when I was doing Perusall the first time, it was like me in there as the instructor, and then my dog was in there as the student. And then I tried things out just to kind of see how it would work. And I could flip back and forth between those perspectives.
Mm-hmm. I seem to remember there being a built-in Perusall test student or test account or something as well.
There might be. I'm curious why, for people who aren't fans, why, like, what are the challenges or what are the downsides? Like,
I figured I just answered. This is Numair. It sucks. You gotta click all over the place. We like to do everything by typing stuff, and it's so hard. You have to read tutorials on how to do stuff. It just gets annoying.
You're talking about Learn, not Perusall,
yes,
right?
Learn.
Oh,
yeah. All right. Okay, fair.
The Learn
it
complaint
does
session is later at EdTech Week.
Yeah.
And it's a big session. We all get excited about it.
Yeah. But Learn does work to hold everything together. So I mean, it does have that. So the students have one common place to go. So just saying.
I will say. Sorry. So in Learn, once you or the student has clicked through via Learn for it to associate their account, or like clicked on an assignment link so that they are in that assignment, they can just go directly to Perusall to do the assignments from then on. They only have to do it the one time for it to connect for grading and to connect for using and all of that kind of stuff. As long as they go in through the assignment instead of through the library, it'll still record everything if they just go directly to Perusall.
Okay. Hold on a second. Maybe I misheard you. Like I had an issue last semester where students were clicking on the Perusall link, setting up their account, but then when they would go to access readings, they just went via Perusall. They didn't go via Learn. And then it wasn't actually connecting to the gradebook. To connect to the gradebook, they had to click the actual link that I created that went straight to that assignment.
Yeah, so they have to click that one time to attach their account to that assignment. But after they've done that one time, then they can go directly.
They have to do that for each reading.
For each assignment,
yes. Yeah. Well, for each gradebook entry, whatever that
entails.
I will say
That's
that
great.
I think on the learn side of things, I was very lucky because I didn't have to move to the online environment last winter because I happened to be on sabbatical. And I'm kind of glad I'm home so like people can't throw stuff at me. But I was very fortunate because that means that I got to start fresh in the summer. And what I did is I took a bunch of CTE workshops and some that were courses and like ones on PebblePad and all these things. And then I basically just like looked at how they design things and designed my class around that. And that it was a completely different design than I'd done before, and the students love it. So there isn't a ton of clicking now because I've, hyperlinked things and it's like really straightforward. So I also think I know we're talking about Perusall, but when it comes to learn and like even where to embed Perusall and how to set it up, I really recommend reaching out to the CTE folks and doing some of those workshops because it can make a huge difference in the student experience.
Nomer had a question here about how cluttered things get. I don't know what all your experience was. For the students, it shouldn't be too bad as long as the groups are an appropriate size. It could get pretty crazy if you had a group of 200 or something. From the instructor side, I don't know if any of you have had experience with that. I've mostly just done smaller classes with it, so I don't know if it gets bad on your end, clutter-wise.
I mean, all of the annotations are basically highlighter, so it's like putting highlighter over the same thing over and over, but it's digital, so it doesn't actually, rip the paper in pieces. But the nice thing that Katie already mentioned is there's 7,000 different types of filtering that you can do on the comments and the annotations and all the different things. So it's very easy to be like, oh, I've already read that one. I don't want to see all of those. I just want to see this piece, right? And if you have the groups, again, you can very quickly kind of disassemble that. That's also a useful way to you can use a bunch of groups, and then if there's something that a bunch of them are asking about, you can post and everybody will see that, right? As Katie was saying. So your ground truth answers inform everybody.
I think one way to avoid any sort of clutter or any confusion is you can just go and read comments, read new comments, and read the unread comments, filter through that, and just go to the next one and go to the next one, and don't even worry about what's highlighted or what's not. Let Perusal take you to the next thing you need to read. It'll take you there. You read it, you comment or not, or do what you need to do and move on to the next one. I found that works very well. It's very simple.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. That was something I didn't realize actually about Perusall when I started using is you don't actually have to click on the highlighted part to see their comment. There's a comment pane in the side. And then like Mario said, basically you can just click next. And if you have it to unread comments, it'll just go to the next unread comment, to the next unread comment. And I think, Nomer, definitely I would do groups. Maybe they can be bigger if it's a STEM course. But I like the default, I think, is 20. Actually, unless Perusall just changed it.
Okay, sorry.
I think that's too big. As I said, I do 8 to 10, but it depends on what you're doing it for. And the other thing is that, and I don't know where I heard this, but the advice I got was don't actually jump in and be trying to be the one to reply to everybody. Let the students do it for each other. And I think I heard this at a Perusall workshop where when you're doing it too quickly and too soon, they'll stop replying to each other. And so I seed the readings. I then let them do their thing. And then basically then I'll go in, a couple of times and see for my planning the class, what it looks like. The other thing is what's really cool too, is you can at people, you can tag people. And so if a student tags you, let's say they really have a question, they want to make sure you see it and reply to it. They can do for me at Katie, and it'll actually give me a notification. And then I can look at the notification and be like, oh, I have 3 notifications where someone added me about something. And then you can do that with students. So in a long thread, you can at someone and then they'll get a notification that you're replying directly to their question so it doesn't get overlooked. So there's a lot of things like that once you start digging into Perusall, you can do that are actually really nice.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We can stay if there's still some questions, if the presenters don't mind staying for a few minutes, if there are more questions, but those of you who wish to leave, you feel free to. And thank you very much for attending. I'd like to thank Mario, Brandon, Katie, and Daniel. It's been awesome. Thank you so much. I hope everybody loves using Perusall. Anyhow. We've had only positive. We had to do a survey of all the users, and everybody has loved it. So I'm a bit of a lover of it. So Are there any other questions in the chat?
Thanks, Namir.
Thanks. All right. Brandon, there's a question for you there. I don't know if you can answer that one. Oops, about using Piazza. It's going by so fast.
Yeah, it's that's basically exactly what I did. I had Piazza and Perusall because there's nothing really else that duplicates Piazza's kind of wiki-based student answers with follow-up structure. So I used Piazza for questions about course organization, lectures, anything that was not either content from a video or content from a reading or content from textbook or whatever. Anything that had like there is a PDF or there is a video that went on Perusall, and anything that was admin, organization, logistics went to Piazza.
I think most people have left, but actually one thing I realized I did not suggest, which I will suggest just so it's in the recording, is in addition to the syllabus, I've started uploading PDFs of the course assignment instructions, and then students can annotate those and just highlight them, ask questions, whatever. And I leave that open to the whole class. I don't do small groups, and it's not required. That's also been really helpful, so I can see how they're interacting with them, and then I'm, able to address questions right away. And it's, I don't know, I find it a lot easier than just like, I also have a forum on Learn, and they can do anonymous questions there, but I find it just so helpful when you can respond to that specific part of the document.
Yeah, I think having those instructions right up front too is super helpful, and making it very clear, particularly because I flipped my course as well, which isn't really a thing that happens in engineering much, being like, this is why I've done this, and this is what it's going to look like. And, I also I have like an anonymous start, stop, continue that is just an open link for the entire term. So at any point, students can give me anonymous feedback about what they want me to start, stop, or continue. And that is super effective. Like I modified a couple of marking schemes in Perusall and a couple of like where we were posting things, announcements versus Piazza, and effectively that was kind of the end of the structural feedback that I got was within the first few weeks, basically.
Excellent. All right. We won't keep anybody any longer. Yeah, I think we only have a few CTE folks left. So anyway, thank you guys very much. Thanks everyone who's still left for coming. And
thank you, everyone.
Thanks
all.
Awesome
Thanks
job.
for organizing, Mary.
Awesome job, you guys. Thank you.
Cheers.